gozaimasu and Merry Christmas, one and all. A short video again here. I just want to wish each and every one of you a very Merry Christmas and a happy and prosperous New Year. It's a little bit difficult to make a film about Christmas movies from Japan to give you a list of the best films that you should be seeking out over the festive period. There are, of course, some festive films, some Christmas films from Japan. Films like the anime Tokyo Godfathers, which is a remake or reworking of an old John Ford, John Wayne Western, believe it or not. Three Godfathers. There's a kind of multi-strand, multi-story ensemble drama, romantic drama called It All Started When I Met You, set in and around Tokyo Station, which is something like those films that we've seen now and again in the West, in which various dramas and stories collide over the course of a single holiday day or special day, like the films Valentine's Day or New Year's Eve. There's an interesting film called Future Memories, Last Christmas by Morita Yoshimitsu, which is worth seeking out if you can get your hands on it. And there are one or two others that espouse something of the sort of view of Christmas that it is a time for romance in Japan. It's viewed, obviously, Japan is not a Christian country. Christmas is viewed through a kind of secular lens, with a sort of, on the one hand, a sort of bemused fascination, and on the other, a desire to participate in the kind of accoutrements, if you like, of the season that the Japanese have seen enjoyed in the West. And speaking of that sort of idea of contrasting Japan with the West, I don't think really this secular view of Christmas from Japan is all that different to the West. I mean, we obviously have in Western Europe, in America, something of a religious sort of foundation, but it's not as though everyone sort of observes that, in a very strict and deep way. I think for probably more people than not, Christmas is about, aside from family, it's about accoutrement, it's about, a Christmas dinner, it's about a certain type of dessert, it's about strange things that people have pointed to, things like this in Japan. But I think, to my mind, this is no more strange than this in the West. So the way that the sort of festive period or festive season is sort of exploded into all of our faces in all kinds of ways in Japan and the West is there's not a million miles apart. So the sense that people in Japan look at the Christmas holidays as through a kind of almost Orientalist lens, through with a kind of bemused fascination at the strange customs of foreigners, isn't really the case. And as I said, the way that they celebrate it might not have any sort of religious significance, but that doesn't necessarily offer a discordant note when placed alongside us in the West. So I'm going to just suggest a film that I always like to watch around this time of year. a Japanese film. Not a film that has anything much or really overt to say about Christmas, but which I think is a really interesting piece of work to consider at this time of year. I'm not going to go into a full review because I'm going to be covering it as an adaptation soon and looking at the notion of canonical works of adapting Japanese literature. So I'm only going to say a few words about the film, but it rhymes actually with one of my favourite Christmas films, which is Ingmar Bergman's Fanny and Alexander, which itself doesn't have, aside from the opening of the film, the first scene, doesn't have a great deal of obvious or overt play with Christmas, but which nonetheless I think is infused with some ideas and indeed an approach to narrative and to filmmaking itself that, to me, rhymes interestingly with how we view Christmas and what it can be used for, if you like. So the film that I'm going to suggest to you as a Christmas favourite from the Land of the Rising Sun is Ichikawa Kon's adaptation of Tanizaki Junichiro's The Makioka Sisters. So why the Makioka Sisters? Why this particular film? I think one of the reasons is a bit like Fanny and Alexander. It's a digressive, it's a long, and in some ways it's a very open film. It's a film that suggests itself as ripe with all kinds of interpretive potentialities. I like sort of daft, sentimental Christmas films as much as the next person, you know, Elf, Home Alone, etc., 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 etc. But one of the things that grates a little bit with me is the sort of pre-packaged, very prescriptive message mongering in these films. These are films that give you no real room to maneuver, if you like. You're kind of hemmed into a very particular view of what Christmas means and what it should mean. And that, you know, that's okay. It obviously rhymes a lot with some of general ideas about Christmas being a time for family and what have you. And as I said, that's okay. I don't want to come along and suggest that Christmas films should be offering very different messages. Indeed, the Makioka Sisters, if you don't know it, which is just a long digressive narrative about four particular sisters, their various personalities, their various sort of trials and tribulations and relationships. As the title suggests, this is a film about family, as so many Japanese films are. And it's not a film that necessarily, at least overtly and only, challenges any sort of ideological impetus about the nuclear family and its place in society, as Fanny and Alexander does not. But it's not a film that is all built around trying to convey a particular message. It's a film that is very open, that is very sort of loose-limbed in the way that it's constructed. And thus, even though it's not a film that, as I said, features anything overtly Christmassy in any detailed or extended way, I think the way that it is built around seasonal change, the narrative covers distinct seasons, gives us a very interesting sort of point of contrast of things that are perhaps overtly not Christmassy or seasonal, against which, or juxtaposed against which, the Christmas scenes or the winter scenes feel all the more special. Another thing that we get with Christmas films in the West is a sense of being sort of locked into Christmas, if you like. And again, I don't suggest this as a sort of obvious flaw, but I think the season, in being contrasted in the Makioka Sisters with non-seasonal styles or dramas, feels all the more sort of distinctive and special. It's a little bit like an older film, an older melodramatic film, like I'm thinking of Douglas Sirk's All That Heaven Allows, which actually does challenge notions of the family a lot more overtly, but which features seasonal scenes that feel all the more special and all the more sort of transient. I think, to bring this back to something that is often perceived to be more Japanese, because of being contrasted with non-seasonal elements, with, you know, the heat of summer, or people celebrating Easter, for instance. We get a sense of Christmas as part of a transient flow of time, and that's what makes it special. There are lots of songs, obviously, that talk about why can't every day be like Christmas. And although they are obviously don't, in most cases, mean let's celebrate things like giving presents or eating a special meal as a family every single day, they mean the values of Christmas. But there is that sense of trying to make Christmas sort of last forever, if you like. And the films that are set around Christmas kind of lock us into this sort of snow globe, this sort of insularity, where we are just sort of immersed in the season. And it feels almost like time has come to a standstill, and we have this sense of a kind of fantasy or wish fulfillment of time coming to a standstill. But of course it never does. And for me, what I find most meaningful about a film like the Makioka Sisters, or a novel like the Makioka Sisters, is that sense of where Christmas is placed, or where the winter is placed, in relation to other months and to other parts of the year, to other celebrations. Because of course we don't, you know, cut off when we're celebrating Christmas. We don't just cut off from the rest of the year, and the way that other relationships in our lives have progressed or may progress, all that doesn't come to a grinding halt over Christmas. It's about fitting Christmas into the ebb and flow of a year and of time in general. And I think that's really movingly and intricately handled by Ichikawa Kon, the great Ichikawa Kon, in his adaptation of the Makioka Sisters. So I think it's for this reason that I really gravitate towards this film. So instead of me suggesting to you a really famous Japanese film that celebrates Christmas, the ones that I've already mentioned, that's my Christmas pick for you. If you haven't seen it before, certainly seek it out. It really is a masterpiece. Read the novel. And I'm going to be returning to this subject, as I said, very, very soon, and doing a lot more about it as part of several different videos that I have in the works. So, once again, I wish you all a very merry, very healthy and happy Christmas. And thank you very much for watching. and I will return in the new year with much more content, and hopefully we'll be talking to more of you then. So bye for now.